We have lots, well, not lots. We have time to take questions from all of you, and so while I give you a second to collect your thoughts, I wanted to start off with a question, maybe on some of people's minds in the audience. Your film just encapsulates and documents such a vibrant moment, an optimistic moment. I'm curious, what do you think, if anything, has changed since you finished making the film?
I think that a lot of what's changed since the ending of the production of the film. I finished field production in the end of January of this year. Is what Nathan Schneider of The Nation talks about, is that the dialogue is dominated right now by the electoral process, and we're stuck again in this lesser of two evils narrative, the Democrats or the Republicans, and how does this movement for radical change create a more compelling narrative when the pillars that hold up this narrative, the pillars that hold up this empire, one of them is the corporately controlled media, has no interest really in telling our stories. So one of the ways I think that we do that is by events like this, by creating our own media and not necessarily looking to Rachel Maddow even to tell our stories, but to tell them ourselves.
I do want to say, I think there is still a lot of optimism in this room. I saw a lot of spirit fingers throughout the film and lots of clapping. So I want to thank all of you again for being here. I also think, from what I understand about how you made your film, I thought there was an interesting process involved. So can you tell me about sort of the collaborative element?
Yeah, the collaborative element started actually before Adbusters put the call out for Occupy Wall Street. I was working with a group called the October 2011 Coalition, which had called for an indefinite occupation of Freedom Plaza in Washington, D.C. That was set to begin and did begin on October 6, 2011, and that date was chosen intentionally as the beginning of the second decade of the Afghanistan war and the beginning of the congressional session that was going to bring in all these austerity cuts. So there was a group that was inspired by Tahrir Square and inspired by what was going on in Wisconsin that was thinking ahead. And then Occupy Wall Street happened, and that became one small chapter in a much bigger story, thankfully, right? So the process went something like this. I was so excited by what I saw happening in October 2011 that I thought, I've got to be there. But I'm married and I have 2 kids, so I couldn't justify to my wife that I was going to go live in a tent in Washington, D.C. in the streets for 2 months unless I raised money to create a documentary, which I had never done before. And then I put out a Kickstarter project and it worked, and then I had to go create the documentary. So that's the result. So the process was, you know, for October, I had a small crew of running around with cameras, and we would go back and we had a system, we were logging footage, and we were even putting out daily updates and things like that. Then I ran out of that money, and then I was running around after October between Boston and Washington and New York. So instead of having a camera crew, it was just me behind the camera. And as you can tell, I'm not so good at editing myself. I had to shut up and listen a lot more. So that was the process. It went from me kind of talking, to me kind of listening.
Okay, so now it's time for questions from the audience. So you just raise your hand if you have a question, and I will try to repeat it back. Okay, all the way in the back.
So some people say that Occupy is useless because we're not creating a party. Since you've been to a lot of different Occupies, I'd like to know what you think about that.
Did everyone hear that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't think Occupy is useless because we're not creating a party. Right? You know, this different Occupy, I think itself is a tactic and maybe the wrong branding choice for a movement that's going to last for years and years and years and years. I think it's wise to not. I think Occupy is wise to not try to create a party, but I think individual occupiers could do a lot worse than look to, say, the Green Party, who has a platform that looks a lot like the Declaration of Occupy Wall Street. They've been around for a lot longer. So that's my opinion, right? So I think you should vote your conscience or vote strategically or do whatever you have to do, but I think what Occupy is successful in doing is saying, look, every 2 years or 4 years, voting is the least that you can do. Is the absolute minimum that you can do, and that's not the beginning or the ending of your kind of relationship with political change or social change.
Thanks. The other question, yes.
Well,
election reform, especially preference order voting, would seem to have been the natural focus for the Occupy movement in this election year, and yet these themes have been comparatively muted and receded from attention. I think for a lot of the audience, it seems to be an opportunity to express sentiments, moral outrage about greed and things like that. What do you think it would take to focus it more on some specific sellable improvements such as preference order voting that would be a major game changer? Because until we get that, it's going to be very difficult to build up a third party to the point where it would have a realistic chance of winning. But with that, it would open the door, whichever third party you like, we can all agree that making it possible to vote for them without losing the lesser evil is desirable. So,
I'll try to paraphrase. So, election reform would have been an interesting focus for the Occupy movement, and then sort of a larger theme of greed, corporate greed, seemed to take traction. So, what do you think it would take for the Occupy movement to sort of bite more into the election reform?
Well, first of all, I try to present myself as an expert in almost absolutely nothing, and a spokesperson for no group or organization. And I know that the people in this room understand that, but I think it goes without saying. Consensus, I guess, is what it would take to get that, right? I think one of the strengths of Occupy can sometimes also be its weakness. This kind of open source, everyone has a voice. Cornel West says one voice among many, etc. It gives voice to so many people that it's hard to narrowly focus on that one thing. My experience hasn't been your experience. I don't hear your narrow focus that much. Saying we have to do this electoral reform. I'm hearing what I'm hearing is money out of politics. What I'm hearing is election reform in the way of saying let's publicly finance elections. Insofar as people are interested in electoral politics, I was in Tampa and I was in Charlotte, and so were about the amount of people that were in this room. Right? Not many occupiers went to Tampa or went to Charlotte. One reason could be that people are regrouping for what's going to happen on Monday. Another reason could be, and I think this argument has a lot of weight behind it, is that they're just not interested in this process this November, that they're thinking bigger. That's my opinion.
Okay, lots of hands. All right, I'm going to go with you first.
Yeah, I saw the website, but what are your plans with the film?
So what are the plans for the film?
Yeah, well, I'm not the best marketer in the world, so I'm giving the movie away for free online. It's streaming at Occudoc.org. You can stream it for free. You can download it for free. I also have some DVDs here. If you want to purchase them, you're welcome to. You also can set the price. So the price is whatever you want the price to be. We're also doing some traditional marketing things, like we're entering into film festivals. We have a commercial run beginning at the Quad Cinema here in New York City on 13th Street and 5th Avenue, starting on September 28th. And talking about money in politics, in Tampa, one of the people that I met was David Bossie, who's the president of Citizens United, that gave us the Citizens United court case ruling, who's the producer of an Occupy hit piece called Occupy Unmasked, which is Andrew Breitbart's kind of last piece. And I challenged him to a double bill with my movie in a publicly moderated debate to follow, and because he's such kind of a macho dickhead, he accepted. So hopefully we can turn that into some kind of circus that generates publicity and gets this movie out there.
Wow.
That's my plan.
Okay. I'm going to go you in the blue shirt, and then you in the black hat, and then zigzag back.
Am I in the blue
Yeah,
shirt?
I think so. Sorry. Colorblind.
There was a scene in the movie regarding 9/11, and I wanted to ask just a clarifying question. It seemed to me, watching it, that a causal link was drawn between American foreign policy and the action that took place 9/11 in a way that seemed to possibly justify 9/11. Was that intended?
Can you repeat?
The question, if I understand it correctly, was that the movie seemed to indicate that there was that the attacks on America on 9/11 were justified. Am I paraphrasing?
More or less, yes.
I don't know. Justify is a hard, difficult word. I guess I would agree with the chickens coming home to roost argument, right? That we have since 1953 been intervening in Iran and the Middle East, and it was like Phyllis Bennett said. 9/11 was an awful, horrible, tragic event for many people in this country. But to think that our reaction to it, 1 million and counting innocent civilians dead in Iraq and Afghanistan, isn't going to have some other consequences for us in the future, like 9/11, I think is naive and only feeds into the profits of the people who benefit from the military-industrial complex. So I'm not siding with the people who attacked us on 9/11. I understand why we were attacked.
Okay, Black Hat, yes.
Yeah, I found the repeated scenes of police brutality really depressing for two reasons. One, it sort of made the conflict look like it's protesters against police rather than against 1%. And the other is, okay, people went out there, they got arrested, they got thrown to the ground, they got shit beaten out of them, we got kicked out of all the places we were occupied. We lost, you know.
So the critique was sort of about all the scenes of protesters versus
I agree.
police.
That was depressing. I accept your criticism. I didn't get a question there, but I accept the comment, the criticism. I agree. And the tone thing is difficult. You know, like people, I struggled with how much of that to show, how much of it not to show. Police brutality, as I tried to say in the movie, is a reality to different degrees, depending on where you live and, you know, largely what color your skin is.
Okay, I think the woman with the short hair? Yeah.
The orange here.
Orange?
I agree with your analysis that greed is the primary issue in inequality of wealth, but it is, with regard to the presidential election, as a woman, and what the Tea Party is standing for, and I do believe that there is a war on women, and I am of an age where I do remember life before the women's movement. It seems hard, it seems unfathomable to me to allow the Tea Party to have control of the Supreme Court. What would you say about that?
I wouldn't advise you how to vote. I think that we're going to all face tough elections, and I wouldn't sell you the idea. And I used to try to sell people this idea, and they didn't even believe it. But I wouldn't stand here and tell you that the Republicans and the Democrats are the same. For the larger fight that I think that Occupy is trying to fight, that all of the issues combined, I would say that we have to limit the influence of big money in our lives, and the big money completely controls both parties. From a single issue standpoint, can you point to one party or another as being better for that single issue standpoint? Of course you can. Is it scary what would happen if the Supreme Court were to be turned over to, you know, radical religious fundamentalists? Sure.
Okay, I think we have time for 2 more questions. I'm gonna go to the left and then to the right. Yeah.
So Dennis, I want to publicly invite you for your next project to actually cover what I think is actually happening in this country now, which is a genuine democracy movement. And it looks like Occupy is a part of it, but the U.S. Social Forum process is actually part of it in the impacted communities and people of color organizations that have actually been going on. And I will personally help you through that process if you take that on. We've had this private conversation. I just want to take this opportunity publicly to invite you to offer help.
This, for people who don't know, this is former Green Party presidential candidate David Cobb, who's also with the Move to Amend coalition. So I think we should give him a round of applause for what he's doing. You know, David, I'll say, you know, I was in Miami for the Veterans for Peace conference. They hosted this movie, and they showed it the night before. They showed my movie. They showed Phil Donahue's movie, Body of War, which is an incredibly powerful movie about a soldier coming home from Iraq and the challenges that he faced. And people asked Phil, "You're going to make a follow-up movie?" He said, not on my dime, right? So like, you know, I think that I didn't know anything about documentary filmmaking before I started this. I got the bug, you know. I would like to accept your challenge. We have to find, we've got to, I hear you know Ben Cohen, and so we can talk to Ben and we can sit down and we can figure this out.
Okay, so the one last question, and then we can have further conversation out in the lobby. Yeah.
First off, congratulations, it's a fantastic film and perfect inspiration for S17. Because my question is looking at the long-term solutions, obviously you discussed get money out, money in politics, constitutional amendment. On the way there though, one of the greatest problems we have is where the money goes, which is largely through these TV commercials, the media that's manipulating the public to vote against their own interests. So I guess my question to you is, how can we better use content like this to beat back against the money that's funding these smears and lies that are destroying our democracy?
In the short term, we can support some independent media channels like Link TV, Free Speech TV, and Russia Today, which have all licensed the non-exclusive rights to this. So it's going to be in the fall lineups on all of those cable channels, and I admit I don't know where to find them. But you can find them maybe and get them out there. And thank you for the compliment. And you know, like it's on these cable channels, but it's also online. And I hear the Facebook thing and the Twitter thing works. You can just click and put a link, and all your friends will see it. It's really easy and free. I'm giving the thing away. I don't know how to like remove any more barriers between the movie and you all. I'm literally giving it away. So. Thank you for the compliment, and if you can help by just tweeting it and Facebooking it and whatever else you do. Occudoc.org.
Okay, thank you so much.